What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of SSPN. I'm Jude. That's Ethan. Ethan is in an exotic, undisclosed location this weekend, but as you guys can see, he's still here on the laptop, being a real one for y'all. But man, Ethan, last week we talked about a lot of things that have continued to get talked about. But I think the biggest thing that we've got to start out with today is, of course, the news over the weekend. As we get a little notification chime in the background, is Greg Popovich announcing his retirement, and also Mitch Johnson being introduced as the Spurs head coach. We saw the news over the weekend, but today the press conference happened. Man, you texted me about it. You saw it this morning. I had a little bit of a busy morning at work, so I didn't get to watch it until around like lunchtime. Man, I want to dish it to you since you got to see it first. I want to start just with his physical condition. You know, we talked about this last time, and, you know, we're not medical experts or anything like that, and that's something we always tried to say. But I think the last time we had a conversation about the Spurs coaching situation after we heard the news that he had fainted at a restaurant was, you know, probably health-wise for him long-term. We were thinking, you know, it's probably not the best to be on an NBA travel schedule. Now, seeing him today, I feel like that's only confirmed. What are your thoughts on how Pop looked, and then also the speech and everything as well?
Yeah, I mean, clearly it was more serious than I think the Spurs organization was letting on initially, right? With the press release, you know, it was a minor stroke. You know, every week it felt like, okay, maybe next week he'll be back, maybe the next week, you know. But when you see him in the press conference, it's clear that this was a very serious and concerning incident for him. You know, it's sad, you know, just to put it simply. It's sad to see him in this way because we're so used to seeing him as the energetic. Like, he's always been old. Like, his my entire life, he's been old.
Yeah.
But he's also been extremely energetic and, you know, the heart and soul of the Spurs organization. So to see him in that way physically was definitely sad. But mentally, you can still tell it's definitely him, right? He still has his humor. Even though he was a little slower with his speech, he was still very fluid and clearly there. So that was great to see. And it was also amazing to see that he was, you know, with Timmy, with Manu. They were kind of uh, helping him get to his chair, helping him get to his podium, and obviously stood next to him the entire time. And the rest of the team was there. The rest of the organization was there. So it was a really powerful moment, honestly. And you know, in the moment, you kind of forget like the magnitude of the situation, right? Of him passing the torch, literally to Mitch Johnson. So, you know, it's definitely a big day in Spurs history for us, for the rest of the fan base. But it's also a sad day to kind of see, you know, where he is physically. But if what he says is true, and I don't suspect that it's a lie, you know, every day gets better and better for Coach Pop, which is good.
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate now that he's not trying to coaching. And, you know, on that schedule, maybe that can, you know, ease some of maybe the complications that came up in his recovery. But
Fair
here's the bottom line. I'm not a medical expert. We're not claiming to be. We just want Pop to live the healthiest, happiest life that he can for the time that he's here. And man, we're so thankful for everything that he did, man. We've never had another head coach. Mitch Johnson is literally Mitch Johnson, Tim Duncan, Becky Hammond. I mean, who are the and then some other guys probably that I'm forgetting, you know, when we were in our really young early years as kids, you know, in the 2000s and early 2010s, you know, of assistant coaches who stepped in. Probably Ime was, you know, took the reins one day. But we could go down through all of those. But the point is, despite all of those, Pop was the continual factor through Kawhi, through LaMarcus, through Wemby, through Tim, through Manu, and everybody else knows this already. But for us, man, we're in our early 20s, and this is really something that's kind of crazy for us just because of the Spurs that we grew up in. I could sit here and talk in circles for forever about Pop, man. But the one other thing that I want to touch on from the press conference that I was not expecting, but it makes sense, honestly. Shout out to DeJounte. Shout out to DeJounte Murray, man. I know there was all this stuff on social media. You know, I know the ending wasn't, you know, it wasn't like Kawhi, but it wasn't, you know, necessarily the happiest or friendliest, you could say. But man, he showed up today and he was there for Pop. Nate Ryan, one of the main sports reporters for Ken's Five, he was the guy who took the first picture there, and he was like, there's not a lot of other teams in the league, if any, that this would happen. And obviously Pop did a ton for DeJounte just with the background that he came from and everything that he kind of went through, in his first couple of seasons, in his personal life, and Pop kind of being a father figure for him. But I had to bring that up because that was something when I saw that, I was like, man, that's not just a testament to DeJounte. Shout out to him for that. But that's a testament to the impact that Pop has on his players.
For sure. And there's the Mitch Johnson connection as well for DeJounte, both from Seattle. He's known him since he was 9 years old, I think is what they said afterwards. So I agree. It was really nice to see him there. I almost wish that more guys had shown up, but I understand it was probably pretty close. What am I trying to say?
Can I interrupt? Okay, like Derek, he's in the playoffs right now. That's another thing, too, to keep in mind.
I was thinking like historical guys, like LaMarcus. No, you're fine. You're fine. LaMarcus Aldridge,
Bruce Bowen, whoever. Right.
Yeah. I mean, Sean Elliott was there. David Robinson. The usual suspects were there, but I know. And for some reason in my head, it would be like a much larger turnout. But you're right. Their playoffs are still going on. So.
Yeah, but I do see what you're saying about some of the non-active players, but I'm sure it also just might have been like a tight circle type of thing. The Spurs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Man, I wish I had more to say on that, but I think you guys should just go watch the press conference, listen to what Pop had to say, watch it. Don't just listen to it, but I think even listening to it, you'd be able to tell just with his voice being quieter. This was kind of the last thought I had. I was talking to my dad about this actually today. And I was thinking, we just remember Pop is always yelling at refs. We remember him as being crazy, like cursing him out. And so when you have that dichotomy of him today, I just think it really puts things in perspective, man. That was the thing that stood out to me. Like the image you remember of him, wasn't what you saw today. And I don't mean that in a very negative way at all. It's just everybody, is going to be up in their 70s and 80s at one point, But man, I'm so glad that he had those people with him, and I'm so glad he's still the president of the organization. I forgot to say that he's not, as much as he's gone, he's really not going anywhere. His fingers are going to be on everybody. Pause. on everything in the organization when it comes to RC Buford, Brian Wright, and of course Mitch Johnson in mentoring and holding him accountable. He mentioned that. So man, I'm probably talking so long, but it's just I can't even. It's hard to describe exactly the feeling that it gives you. But Pop, we love you so much. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Agreed.
Let's move on to the next head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, though, Ethan, Mitch Johnson. The last time that we talked about this, I was like, hey, I think we can go get a big fish. I don't think we should just settle on Mitch Johnson. But apparently, not even apparently, I don't know what to say. I'm just completely flipping because it's clear to me that the Spurs organization is fully invested in Mitch Johnson. And here's some quotes I have written down. Brian Wright said, "It was an easy decision." And so that was something that stood out to me, with all of the potential candidates that could be had, but also not just a Pop approved decision, not just an RC approved decision, not just a Brian Wright approved decision, but this is a Victor Wembanyama approved decision as well. So that gives me all the confidence in the world. I know that in comparison to some of the criticisms that we might have had, at the latter half of the season and everything like that, and also, like I said, just feeling like because of the position the Spurs were in and how attractive they were, that it seemed like we could go out and get somebody else. But this is also probably the most Spurs thing ever, in the sense that we're just elevating somebody who really probably this is probably in the work for like 3 years. They've probably known this for like a couple years at this point. Mitch is actually who's going to replace him. It's not Will Hardy. It's not all these other guys. And notice too that Brian Wright mentioned that him and Mitch Johnson came in the same summer. But again, I could go on and on about that. What are your thoughts on Mitch Johnson being named the head coach and how the Spurs came to the decision?
I agree with what you said. This was probably the plan the entire time. Pop just getting sick was an unexpected wrinkle in the timeline of the plan. Pop was probably going to stick around for this past season and then this upcoming year as well, and then just kind of hand the reins to Mitch Johnson, and then we all would have been completely fine. But Pop getting sick, and then the unexpected circumstances where Mitch had to take over, and then there was the ups and the downs this season and injuries, and so I was right there with you. I wanted to go get a big name, a big fish, but who are we to disagree with
Yeah.
the Spurs front office, right? And Mitch Johnson is a guy that's kind of gone through the ranks at every level as a really good college player. I think he tried to make the league. Obviously, didn't make the league, and then worked his way out through the coaching rankings and went through the G League and all of that. So he's been through pretty much every possible circumstance other than just like being an official NBA head coach. So now, it's finally his team. He has a full offseason under his belt. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for sure, and be on his side for the foreseeable future. I will say I think Mitch Johnson's leash is probably shorter than expected. I think he probably has 2 years to get into the second round, or at least compete at that second round spot in the playoffs, or the Spurs start looking elsewhere, especially if one of these big trades that's being rumored actually goes through.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I will say that nobody is going to have as long of a leash as Pop. That is 1000% a fact. And when you throw on Victor Wembanyama being in there, I completely agree with your sentiment. I'll get into some of the things, when it comes to the criticisms this year, even in the conversation where we talked about how, maybe we should go for a big fish, or you and I were just saying we would want to go for a big fish.
Mm-hmm.
We were also saying that like all of the criticisms of Mitch Johnson, we just kind of viewed him as an interim. So we weren't really like diving that deep or like taking it that seriously. And so, of course, now with him being the head coach, a lot of people are going to be like, look at all of these things that he did bad. Oh my God, I hate these rotations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to just make excuses for everything and brush everything away, but like the context does matter, man. Not just the situation he was thrust into, but then also the end of the season whenever it comes to Victor and De'Aaron. And here's the thing that I'll say, man. If we're going to talk about the negatives, let's talk about Stephon Castle's development at the end of the season. Like, is he just not... Does Mitch Johnson just get no credit for that whatsoever? And I'm not saying it's all him, but like, do we just take away the credit for him playing him, 35 minutes a game at the end of the year, which we kind of consistently did? Like we got to give him some, if we're going to criticize some things, we also got to look at the positives. And I'm sure people are going to, point at the wins and losses, but that just points me to a press conference or a moment in this press conference where a reporter asks, he asked Mitch Johnson, I don't remember the exact question, but it was basically, in this disappointing season, or let me see exactly what I texted you. I might be getting the wording wrong there. Yeah, no, in this difficult season. He said, and in this difficult season, what were some things that you learned, blah, blah, blah. But that was how he framed it. And Mitch responded. He said, in this air quotes difficult season, and then went on to respond. But basically what he's saying there is he's like, I'm not viewing it that way. That's just what you said. And I think that ties into the Spurs, man. I don't think that the Spurs aren't viewing this, that the way that the internet masses are. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they brought in De'Aaron Fox. They needed to get Victor healthy. Jeremy was even sat for like the past 15 or the last 10 or so games of the year. I think team looks very different when it's healthy. And I know that's an obvious thing to say when you don't have De'Aaron Fox and Victor. And I know people might be like, well, if he comes and runs these same rotations and we have the same roster, and like we saw in the 3 games that we saw this year, those same problems are going to come up and we're going to be a play-in team. I just disagree at that point. I will say I'm going to be looking at Mitch Johnson a completely different way next season, but I'm not trying to say that we should completely dismiss everything that we saw from Mitch Johnson this season, but I just think that the context is so key. And I think that rang true in the press conference.
Yeah, context is huge. And I also think, let's think back to when he very first started for Pop. He went on a little bit of a stretch there where we actually had conversations like, should we even want Pop back?
Right.
Because he was doing so well as the coach, or the team was performing well with him at the helm. And then obviously there were injuries and all the things that you already alluded to. So I'm willing, let's give him a full offseason to figure it out himself. And let's be honest, there were probably some tank-ish methods going on in the background as well with this season, the way just things panned out for us. It was like, why fight for the 9th seed when we could just lose a couple more games and get a higher pick? So
yeah, and have a chance to jump into the top 4.
Yeah, exactly
in a draft like this as well.
I'm with you.
Okay.
In Mitch we trust.
Yes, sir. Yes, me too. Even though the last episode I said we're going for a big fish, if Pop came out there and said this is the next guy to lead, ignore my opinion. Go with the GOAT.
Right. Agreed.
All right. Last quote. This is from Mitch Johnson in the press conference. It's a new chapter because it looks different, but the theme of the book is the same.
I'm going to bring out, because it's May 5th technically, we missed May the 4th, but I'm going to bring out a Star Wars quote that George Lucas said, Jude, about writing 1, 2, and 3 after 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, wait, no, never mind. 4, 5, and 6 are the best, in my opinion.
It's okay. It's all right. He said, like great poetry, they rhyme. It's a different era, but these stories are going to be the same. The arc is the same.
And let me say, 1, 2, and 3, dog walk 7 through 9. So.
Oh, absolutely. 7 through 9 were not written by George Lucas.
Yes. Thank you. Side note.
This is turning into the Star Wars podcast.
We haven't even talked about Star Wars really, but I love how we're just on the same page on that. Good to know. Okay, Ethan. Another thing that we talked about last week, the Spurs potentially trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's been all over Twitter this week. Shout out to one of my close friends. He is also an SSPN watcher, and he gave me that idea last Saturday. So that was all him, as much as, we kind of brought it on SSPN. And he saw the future, man. He had the crystal ball, because by Friday, Twitter was, are the Spurs trading for Giannis? Is Giannis going to New York? He's walking around in New York with his wife. The Spurs are probably have the most assets. David Aldridge putting out a 3-team trade with Zion going to the Bucks, Giannis going to the Spurs, and then us sending like Jeremy Sohan, Keldon, and Devin, and a bunch of picks. So it wasn't just us. I mean, David Aldridge from TNT, speaking of Pop interviews, everybody was talking about this by the end of the week. And obviously that had to do with, the Bucks getting eliminated in the fashion that they did. Here's my thing, Ethan. I've looked at some of the comments. I've kind of ruminated on this since last week. Stephon Castle is untouchable. Not even a question. I understand that if I'm a Bucks fan, I'll be honest, I'll put myself in the shoes of a Bucks fan. The conversation starts with Stephon Castle for me. Or there's no conversation. But we did see a 3-team trade at the trade deadline, or close to the trade deadline, with the Spurs and the Sacramento Kings. And like I said with the David Aldridge trade, he even threw in, Zion to try to get them, a true star back, because we're not giving them Stephon Castle. And as much as, we're actually people who believe in the potential of Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, and Keldon Johnson, we understand they're nowhere near, a Giannis Antetokounmpo or Zion Williamson. With all that being said, though, man, my main takeaway, since I've ruminated on this, is I think if this is going to happen, which as time has passed, I feel like less and less that it is personally, I think that it's going to have to be a 3-team trade. What are your thoughts on just the potential of this trade and how it would go down a week later?
I would agree with that sentiment. It has to be a 3-team trade. If we can get that one that David Aldridge proposed, I would do it in a heartbeat. However, I'm with you. I'm not giving up Stephon Castle for anybody, anything. But to be honest, we said that about De'Aaron Fox too. And for the most part, if you remember back then, every Sacramento fan, every TNT, ESPN guy was saying like, oh, Stephon Castle will be in this trade if they want De'Aaron Fox. And somehow we were able to get him without including De'Aaron Fox. So the Spurs are aware of how valuable Stephon Castle is. They're not just going to toss him for anybody, including Hall of Famers like Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I'm with you, dude. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the money's too much. I think it might be just a little bit too soon for the Spurs to pull the trigger on that, especially with a new head coach at the helm. I think we probably wait another year to pull off a trade like that. And to be honest, I think maybe a Kevin Durant trade might be slightly more likely because we would have to give up less, and long term, we wouldn't necessarily have to worry about paying KD another max because he's old at this point. With Giannis, you're going to have to give him another max contract in like 2 years,
Yeah.
and then you got to pay Wemby too, and then it becomes an issue.
I completely agree on the Kevin Durant side of things. That's not me saying we should 100% go pursue Kevin Durant, but when we're talking about this over the past week, that's what I've kind of thought about. KD is like where we can eat his salary while we're still on this Wemby rookie contract, but one, his contract isn't long enough to, put us in a stranglehold long term. And I know you could say, oh, well, Giannis's technically isn't either. But like you said, if we want to keep him around, which I assume we would want to do if we're going to go get that or make that move, we'd have to pay him the extension. So bringing in KD, like I said, kind of allows us to, take advantage of this Victor rookie contract and then also keep that long-term flexibility. But to be honest with you, when I think about that, this is just all making me think like, you know what, screw all this. Let's just draft 2 guys and roll into next year with who we have. Because here's the thing. I know everybody else, it's like, oh, we need more people. We need more people. These guys suck, blah, 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 blah. We traded for De'Aaron Fox last year. We made the trade for an all-star already, and we just got the rookie of the year for the second year in a row. And we just did a press conference with Tim Duncan and David Robinson, and both of their rookies of the year next to Stephon Castle and Victor Wembanyama. To me, that's the obvious passing of the torch, and those are the 2 building blocks. That's why we give him a nickname, Area 51. Then on top of that, you've got the all-star that came in at the trade deadline earlier this year. As much as I would love to get Giannis Antetokounmpo or Kevin Durant and make a championship run, that can still happen even if we don't make that move. And I'm not saying necessarily next season, but as everybody, again, like we talked about last episode, in 2 years, Jeremy Sohan, I think he's a much improved player. I really do. And maybe I'm crazy for that and I end up being wrong there, but I think those guys can continue to develop. If Devin Vassell can get more consistent as a shooter over the next 2 seasons, you know what I mean? I don't think it's that crazy to say that the Spurs could be a championship contender in 2 years. And I think that we probably would supplement some things, with role players along the way. And who knows what happens with the lottery? God forbid we jump up into the top 4. That's another all-star we're bringing in. Or maybe we just draft well at 8, considering we drafted DeJounte Murray and Derek White at 29. I know that's very optimistic, and that's a lot of Spurs-colored glasses, but also all of those things are true.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like playing it slow here. And with everything that you just said about the improvement with the ability of the team as it is currently constructed to be a championship contender in a couple of years, we can still make a trade in a couple of years. Like, we're not limited to just Giannis or KD. In a couple of years, somebody else with a big name and a few all-star appearances under their belt will also be disgruntled or have a first-round early exit in the playoffs. And, the Spurs will still have a lot of draft capital. We'll still have Devin and Keldon. We'll still have Jeremy. We can trade at that point if we absolutely need to.
Last thing I'll say, look at 2 of our biggest rivals. Look at the Thunder and look at the Rockets. How have they built it up?
Drafting well and timely veteran signings.
Shout out Harrison Barnes.
OKC had 1 trade.
Go ahead.
OKC did trade for
Hartenstein?
Caruso.
Oh, Caruso.
Yeah. They signed Hartenstein, which is one of the best free agency signings of all time.
Yeah, low key. I know that people might hear that and feel like that's hyperbole, but they're 68-14. We'll see how they do tonight in about 15 minutes against the Nuggets, man. Oh my gosh. I got to check the Celtics Knicks score. Have you seen that?
I was watching it earlier. It was
Sorry
close.
to steal you from it.
No, you're totally fine. It was not hyperbole.
I love how people watching this is going to be after we're live recording. We got to check the score, man. This is what happens.
89-86 Boston right now. 6 minutes left.
Interesting.
So everyone knows exactly what time of day it is.
There you go. But yeah, man, with the Spurs and Giannis or KD, one of these big trades. If it's KD, I think we got some more flexibility trade-wise as on top of long-term flexibility. But also with Giannis, again, bottom line for me, the more time passes, I just don't really see it. The only way I think it happens is if we do something like we did in the Kings trade or like the David Aldridge trade. Like it's got to be a 3-team trade where the Bucks get another star and we don't give up Stephon. That's the only way I see that Bucks trade happening. But again, I just feel like the Bucks are really going to want Stephon Castle involved in that. And maybe they could get another star that would satisfy them along with like a Devin Vassell and a Keldon or a Jeremy or whatever we throw in there. But again, man, this just goes back to me talking about Jeremy Sohan. Like I don't want to trade him either, man.
I think we could keep Jeremy in a Kevin Durant trade, but now we're getting too deep into the woods here.
For sure. But that's kind of Ethan and I's thoughts on all of the blockbuster stuff. I mean, we'll definitely keep an eye on it. Again, the one thing I would say I still agree with in comparison to the last episode is that with the Spurs being as attractive of a destination as they are now, that definitely is like way more realistic than I think like Tim Duncan era.
I would agree.
But with all that being said, Ethan, that pretty much wraps up the main topics we got today. We do have one more thing because we know the people are going to be fiending for draft content. But more importantly, our next episode that we do will be a live stream of the lottery results next Tuesday. So y'all put that on your calendars. And this is the last time we can do a mock draft where we can do a lottery simulator. So let's get that in here to wrap up the episode. Let me pull up Fanspo. Because like I said, we will be doing those reactions. It's crazy, Ethan. It feels like the other two that we've done were only like 6 months apart, but really they're like 2 years apart, man. It's wild how time flies.
Right.
All righty. Here we go. And after next week, we'll give you guys a preview on this too, because we've done a little bit of our prospect breakdowns on our own. But you guys might remember our guy Lou from Miami Heat Beat as well as Playoff Foul. He is going to be on the channel the week after the lottery once we know where the Spurs are at. And he'll kind of help us go in depth and really break down a lot of those guys in ways that Ethan and I can't. When it comes to the prospects that the Spurs could potentially pick. But it won't just be that. We will also be giving Lou his flowers on Stephon Castle for what he called last season and just having a whole discussion about Stephon's season this year and what he saw from him and everything like that. So y'all get excited for that. But let's go ahead and sim this lottery. All right. Interesting. So Philly and Charlotte jump up in this one, but the Spurs stay put at 8 and 14. So no number one pick this time, Ethan. So this will be a little bit more realistic.
Perfect. Love that Utah dropped to 4. That makes me so happy.
Look at this. Dylan Harper, number 1, and Cooper goes to 6. Goes to the Sixers, man. Rigged for sure. Now watch goes to the Pels there. Asa Newell off the board as well. So this is interesting, Ethan. We got a couple different options here. This is probably like the most options we've had. What are your thoughts on the crowd?
Well, we got a little taste of everything that you could possibly want, Jude. We got the shooter, the off-ball mover, and Knipple. We have the guy that you're really high on that's a playmaker, versatile guy, solid defender, and Kasparas. Mm-hmm. And then we got Derek Queen, who most people have just before this in their mock drafts, who's an incredible scorer at the center position, but not the biggest dude in the world either. So there's 3 different flavors.
You know, Ethan, I think I know I said Kasparas is my favorite player, and I will say he still is. But I do feel like Kahn is the better fit for the Spurs in this situation. I love Kasparas, but I just feel like Kahn's off-ball shooting, as much as I think Kasparas is a good shooter, he doesn't need the ball in his hands as much. And as much as I would love Kasparas to be the backup point guard, we have so many guys that we can put the ball in their hands.
I would agree with that sentiment, and I'll go with you. I'll go Knipple. Although we haven't yet drafted Derek Queen.
No, we did. We did. Mock draft volume 3. He's on the thumbnail.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
We've done so many, Ethan. It's all good.
They meld together.
Con Knipple going to the Spurs. It's funny, Ethan, because the last mock draft I saw had Con Knipple going to the Spurs here, and at 14, they had another favorite player of yours. I'm curious if he's jumped up the draft boards, but let's see what it looks like here on Fanspo. Oh man, Kasparas goes to the Rockets. The Kasparas Reed Shepherd duo in 3 years is just going to torture me.
The Mavericks got Derek Queen. That's wild. They have like 5 centers.
Yeah, that wouldn't have happened here. It would have fell to us. That would have been a great pick.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, the other mock draft that I saw, Ethan, it's funny you bring up Derek Queen. Who I was alluding to is Danny Wolf. I saw Danny Wolf here at 14. I don't know if that's what I'm going to go with our crop here, but I will say that I did see that. I can't remember which mock draft it was, but it was a legit one. So maybe that could be a possibility here at 14.
Danny Wolf is my dog, as you all know, but what's his name is also my dog. Who's that other big guy?
Kalkbrenner.
Kalkbrenner. Bring me some Kalkbrenner.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we got Con Knipple here. Not to go over this every episode, Ethan, but this probably moves Devin Vassell to the 3, Harrison Barnes to the backup 4. So that really does leave, unless we want to go with Jace Richardson here to compete with Blake Wesley, or maybe not even Jace Richardson, but a Nolan Traore down here as well. Unless we want to go with one of those guys, that center position is really wide open still in this situation.
I also see my guy Carter Bryant, who I would not be mad at, Jude.
We do. The one thing I'll say about Carter Bryant here is that is kind of loading up on forwards here. Let me pull it up here. So again, remember, we're going to probably slot Con into that backup 2 position where Devin Vassell is, elevate Devin to the starting position, and move Harrison down to the 4. So if we got Carter Bryant, again, I guess he would be the 3rd string 4, but do we want to use that for a 14th pick, or would we be playing him at center? You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Who do you want? I really don't care. Well, we can take Igor Demon if we want to go upside. We could also just take Jace and get that flamethrower.
Honestly, here's my top 2 on this one. I want to be a little different as much as I love Jace Richardson. So I'm considering Nolan Traore here just to have that French connection there at the backup point guard position. But honestly, the other guy I'm thinking is Danny Wolf, Ethan. I'm serious.
Do you want Danny?
All right,
I'm all over it.
And here's the thing. We need a 7-footer desperately. And he has the versatility that if we do want to go with the Twin Towers, we can play him and Wemby on the floor together. Now, I will say initially again, please, for everything that is good and holy, play him at the backup center position.
Yeah, he's going to be backup 3.
Right. He's going to be the backup 4 next to Bismack. No, I actually genuinely, though, wouldn't mind this pick at 4. I don't, I could say it's a little bit of a reach, but I think because of his skill set, the way he plays, yeah, man, I think he has a lot of things in his game, not just the off the dribble stuff, but like passing wise. I think there's a lot of Spurs traits in Danny Wolf that I see on top of him coming from a blue blood program. This would be a guy from Duke and a guy from Michigan.
My guy. Oh, sorry, Ed. You don't got to convince me, my guy. I'm all for the Danny Wolf train. You know that.
I'm forgetting some of his best attributes here. I know he can put things on the dribble and shoot a little bit, but can you give the breakdown for the people again?
Oh, man, he's got the low post game. He's got the footwork. He can face you up and take you off the dribble. His 3-point shot looks real fluid. I don't know his exact percentage in front of me, but, according to the tape, my guy can spot up from deep. And honestly, he has a lot of the same traits as Derek Queen, but he's just slightly bigger and slightly more physical. So he's averaging closer to 10 rebounds over Derek. So, I mean, that's kind of what you're looking for the Spurs in that sense. And we compared him a little bit to what's the old boy's name that's playing for Memphis, the rookie center.
I'm thinking it's
Zach.
Okay.
Not in terms of play, but like impact. A lot of people thought Edey would have minimal impact coming out of Purdue. I think Danny, including you and I think Danny Wolf could have a similar like surprise factor for the way he's able to impact NBA games because he's more of a traditional big, but can also step out.
And to that point, he's a junior. coming in, not a true freshman
Yeah.
coming in, somebody who he played at Yale, worked his way up, played at different levels of basketball. And because of the Spurs' desperate need for that backup center position, I think that only adds to what you were saying. And I think that's the same mold as kind of Edey. They had a hole at that center position. He's filling it. And look what he's done for them this year. But yeah, man, thank you so much for the Danny Wolf breakdown there. And I guess the last thing that I would say, I feel like there was something else that I was going to say about him.
He's real fluid too. For those of you that haven't watched tape, don't be what's the word I'm looking for? Deterred by the 7 foot, 250-pound frame that you're seeing on your screen. Like, go watch some tape. The guy actually, he moves his feet really well.
100%. This was the thing that I was forgetting, Ethan. You brought up the Derek Queen comparison, and I know we've talked about this on multiple episodes, but go look at the stats in the Big Ten tournament when they played each other. As much as Derek Queen was able to get 31 points on him, I will give him that, only had 3 rebounds, and Danny had like 22 and like 14 or something. And that is exactly what the Spurs need.
100%.
Let's go to this third pick, Ethan, which is probably going to be a two-way in all likelihood. But man, that picking somebody who's 7 feet tall, Ethan, is just so satisfying.
Feels good.
It feels better than it should.
Well, we might be able to just really take this one home and draft Kalkbrenner, and then we'll have Kalkbrenner, Knipple, and Wolf. We got that depth.
We would have Kalkbrenner, Wemby, and Danny Wolf. No questions about 7-footers anymore. Johnny Broom still on the board?
He is.
Probably not realistic. Will he stay? Please? No way. Dagger? Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Well, this is easy, right?
Take him. I'm with you.
I mean, I know that's kind of doubling up there, man, but we talked about Danny's versatility. I still would say Johnny Broom is a center here, but man, we need depth, and he's also the best player available here, no doubt.
Oh yeah, easy buckets too. I'm all for this pick. This is real value at 38. This is somebody that could actually crack a small rotation here. This is probably not going to happen, but this is fun for us.
Look, if we're going to do the Cooper Flag one, we'll live with this one too, right?
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah, definitely not going to happen in all likelihood. But I will say, if this were to happen in real life, and we picked Danny Wolf at 14, I would still want to make this decision.
Me too.
They agree.
Copper agrees. Spurs dog agrees.
We'll go ahead and wrap this episode up, y'all. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us today. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel recently. We got 1,000 views on that Giannis clip, as well as around 1,500 views on the last podcast. So we appreciate y'all for real. Go Spurs, go. Don't forget to hit that like button and that subscribe button below if you enjoy the content. Follow us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. Again, we appreciate y'all. We'll see y'all in the next one. Go Spurs, go. Pop is the GOAT!